The late 1930s was a time of tension, uncertainty, and scientific breakthrough. Europe was recovering from the devastation of World War I, but the rise of fascist regimes in Germany, Italy, and Japan threatened global peace. Adolf Hitler had consolidated power in Germany, and his aggressive, expansionist policies, including the annexation of Austria in 1938 and the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1939, were alarming the world. Before starting our video, if you love to watch history-related stories about World War II, please subscribe to our channel and like the video, so it helps me to make more good quality videos for you. Let's the story started. Meanwhile, the field of physics was undergoing revolutionary change. In 1938, German scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann successfully split a uranium atom, a process later explained by Lise Meitner and Otto Frisch as nuclear fission. The splitting of an atom released a staggering amount of energy, far beyond anything previously imagined. Scientists realized that a chain reaction could lead to an explosive release of energy, in other words, an atomic bomb. Leo Szilard, a Hungarian physicist who had fled Nazi persecution, immediately recognized the military potential of fission. He and fellow physicists feared that Germany would be the first to create an atomic weapon. Szilard drafted a warning letter to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939. Co-signed by Albert Einstein, the Einstein-Szilard letter outlined the potential for nuclear weapons and suggested that the U.S. begin research into uranium enrichment and chain reactions. The letter had a profound effect. Roosevelt authorized initial government research, though progress was slow at first. The project that would eventually become the Manhattan Project started as a small-scale scientific investigation. Initial studies in the United States were conducted at universities, including Columbia and the University of Chicago. Scientists were trying to determine how to sustain a nuclear chain reaction, how to produce sufficient quantities of fissile material like uranium-235, the feasibility of using nuclear fission in a weapon. The challenges were enormous. Uranium-235 made up less than 1% of natural uranium, requiring complex separation methods such as gaseous diffusion and electromagnetic isotope separation. Another material, plutonium-239, could be produced in nuclear reactors, but this required building enormous, sophisticated facilities. Even in these early stages, it became clear that producing a bomb was not just a scientific problem, but a massive logistical, engineering, and industrial challenge. While scientists were exploring fission, the political situation in Europe was deteriorating rapidly. By September 1939, Germany had invaded Poland, starting World War II. The U.S., though officially neutral, feared that if Nazi Germany gained a nuclear weapon, it could change the balance of power dramatically. President Roosevelt understood the urgency. By 1941, as the war intensified, he authorized increased funding and brought the Army Corps of Engineers into the project. This move transformed what had been a small scientific endeavor into a massive, secret military-industrial project. From the beginning, secrecy was paramount. Scientists worked under strict confidentiality, with only a small circle of trusted officials aware of the full scope. Communications were heavily monitored, and even ordinary workers at research sites often had no idea what they were contributing to. The fear of espionage was real. German agents were active, and later, Soviet spies would infiltrate parts of the project. This secrecy set the tone for the Manhattan Project, a race against time, a race against enemies, and a race within oneself to balance morality, science, and national security. By 1941, the stage was set for one of the largest, most secretive, and most consequential scientific endeavors in history. Fission had been discovered. Its military potential was clear. The U.S. government recognized the need for immediate action. Scientists, engineers, and military officials would soon embark on a coordinated effort spanning thousands of people and multiple states. The Manhattan Project was not just a scientific challenge, it was a race that would determine the fate of the world. By mid-1942, the U.S. government realized that nuclear weapons development needed full-scale organization and military oversight. The project was no longer just an academic experiment, it had become a strategic imperative. In August 1942, the Army Corps of Engineers officially took charge of the program, designating it the Manhattan Engineer District, later known simply as the Manhattan Project. The project was headquartered in Manhattan, New York, hence the name. President Franklin D. Roosevelt approved a massive increase in funding and personnel. Unlike earlier small-scale research, the Manhattan Project now required coordination between scientists, engineers, and military officers across the country, all while maintaining strict secrecy. The military needed a leader who could manage both massive engineering projects and secretive scientific work. General Leslie R. Groves was appointed to oversee the project. He had previously directed the construction of the Pentagon and had experience managing large-scale engineering efforts. Groves' role was to handle logistics, security, and funding. His leadership style was decisive and often authoritarian. He enforced strict secrecy and efficiency. J. Robert Oppenheimer, a theoretical physicist and professor at the University of California, Berkeley, was chosen to lead the scientific research at Los Alamos Laboratory. Oppenheimer's brilliance, charisma, and ability to coordinate complex scientific teams made him the perfect fit. Under him, some of the greatest minds of physics and engineering would converge to solve unprecedented challenges. Groves and Oppenheimer formed an unusual but effective partnership. Groves controlled the resources and security, while Oppenheimer directed the science. The Manhattan Project required remote, secure sites to conduct research, enrich uranium, and produce plutonium. 3 major locations became the heart of the project. Los Alamos, New Mexico, scientific hub for bomb design. Located in a secluded canyon to ensure secrecy. Laboratories, testing facilities, and housing for scientists were constructed rapidly. Los Alamos became the brain of the operation. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, uranium enrichment. Massive plants built to separate uranium-235 from uranium-238 using electromagnetic, gaseous diffusion, and thermal diffusion methods. Thousands of workers, many unaware of their ultimate goal, worked in huge factories. Hanford, Washington, plutonium production. Nuclear reactors produced plutonium-239, which was chemically separated at processing plants. Hanford became the first full-scale nuclear production site in the world. In addition to these sites, smaller facilities, testing grounds, and administrative centers were established across the United States. The project employed over 130,000 people by the end of the war. The Manhattan Project was a feat of industrial and scientific coordination unlike anything seen before. It cost over $2 billion in $19,040, $30 billion today. Employed top scientists, engineers, military officers, and tens of thousands of factory and construction workers. Involved massive logistical challenges, transporting raw materials, constructing facilities, and coordinating secret work across states. Security measures were extreme. Mail was censored, guards patrolled, and employees often worked without knowing the full scope of the project. Despite the size, the project moved with urgency. There was fear that Germany or Japan might develop a nuclear weapon first. The Manhattan Project faced enormous technical and organizational challenges. Scientific hurdles. Calculating critical mass, neutron moderation, and bomb design was extremely difficult. Two types of bombs were conceptualized: uranium-based and plutonium-based. Material production. Uranium-235 is extremely rare, requiring huge separation plants. Plutonium required reactors and chemical processing at an unprecedented industrial scale. Secrecy versus scale. Coordinating thousands of workers without revealing the ultimate purpose required complex security protocols. Even top scientists were sometimes kept in the dark about parts of the project. Ethical concerns. Some scientists began to question the morality of building a weapon of mass destruction. Internal debates arose about whether the bomb should be used against civilian populations. By the end of 1942, the Manhattan Project had transformed from a theoretical concept into a massive national effort. Leadership under Groves and Oppenheimer provided the structure and vision necessary to tackle unprecedented challenges. Remote sites, immense factories, and secret laboratories were operational, setting the stage for the scientific and technical breakthroughs that would follow. Despite uncertainty, the U.S. was committed to completing the bomb before the Axis powers could. The stage was now set for the scientific breakthroughs at Los Alamos, the production efforts at Oak Ridge and Hanford, and the eventual construction of the first atomic bomb. At the heart of the Manhattan Project was a single physical phenomenon: nuclear fission. When a heavy nucleus, like uranium-235 or plutonium-239, absorbs a neutron, it becomes unstable and splits into two lighter nuclei, releasing energy and additional neutrons. Those released neutrons can then strike other fissile nuclei, producing more fissions, a chain reaction. Fissile versus fertile. Fissile isotopes, U-235, Pu-239, can sustain a chain reaction with thermal neutrons. Fertile isotopes, U-238, can capture neutrons and transmute into fissile material. U-238, Pu-239 via neutron capture and beta decay in reactors. Cross-section. Probability a nucleus will absorb or scatter a neutron depends on neutron energy. Moderator. Substance, graphite, heavy water, that slows fast neutrons to thermal energies, where many fissile isotopes have higher capture cross-sections. In reactors, slowing increases the chance of fission. Criticality. Subcritical. Chain reaction dies out. Critical. Each fission causes, on average, one more fission, steady state. Supercritical. Each fission causes more than one subsequent fission, exponential growth. Critical mass, minimum mass, and shape, purity, density, and presence of a reflector tamper of fissile material needed to reach prompt supercriticality. Geometry matters. A sphere minimizes surface area for a given volume and thus lowers critical mass. Prompt versus delayed neutrons. Prompt neutrons are emitted immediately during fission and drive explosive growth in a bomb. Delayed neutrons are emitted later and are crucial for control in reactors, but are negligible for the microsecond timescale of a nuclear explosion. Energy yield, E equals mc squared, tells us a small amount of mass converted to energy yields enormous power. In fission, only a fraction of a percent of mass is converted, but that still produces yields in the kiloton range with very small masses of fuel. Multiple technical advances made progress possible. Critical mass calculations. Early theoretical work determined relationships between mass, shape, density, and tamper effects. Physicists had to compute neutron transport, multiplication factors, and prompt power growth with only early computers, ENIAC came later, or hand computations and mechanical desk calculators. Nuclear reactors at scale, Enrico Fermi and colleagues built the first controlled chain reaction, Chicago Pile 1, 1942. This proved reactor theory and paved the way for full-scale production reactors at Hanford. Reactor design required graphite or heavy water moderation, control rods, and methods to handle intense radioactivity. Isotope separation at industrial scale, gaseous diffusion, K25, electromagnetic separation, Y12, and thermal diffusion, S50, were all scaled up to unprecedented sizes, each with unique engineering challenges: barrier materials for diffusion, vacuum and power management for calutrons. Explosive lens technology, transforming detonation wavefronts, required mathematical modeling of shock dynamics and precise manufacturing. Creating lenses with consistent detonation velocities and low tolerances was both a materials and industrial challenge. Precision timing and electronics, synchronizing detonators with microsecond accuracy, led to innovations in firing circuits and pulse technology. Metallurgy and chemistry. Handling plutonium required new chemical separation techniques, bismuth phosphate process, new metallurgy, casting and machining plutonium, which has complex phase behavior, and radiation-safe handling methods. Diagnostics and measurement. Instruments to measure neutron flux, yield estimations, and radiochemical analysis were developed, enabling scientists to understand and refine designs. While Chapter 2 introduced leaders, here are more scientists and engineers whose technical contributions were crucial. Enrico Fermi, Reactor Physics, Chicago Pile 1, Practical Experience in Building the First Controlled Chain Reaction. Niels Bohr, Theoretical Insights and International Perspective, contributed to scientific understanding and morale. Richard Feynman, Theoretical Work and Practical Problem Solving at Los Alamos, later famed for pedagogy and charisma. Edward Teller, Advocate for fusion and later thermonuclear weapons, participated in theoretical calculations. Hans Bethe, Head of the Theoretical Division at Los Alamos, critical calculations on implosion physics and bomb yield estimates. John von Neumann, contributed to hydrodynamics and shockwave calculations useful for implosion modeling. Klaus Fuchs, note, later revealed as a spy, worked on theoretical problems including implosion. His espionage to the Soviet Union later had major geopolitical consequences. George Kistiakowsky developed explosive lens design and explosive engineering. Louis Slotin, Robert Serber, Harold Agnew, Ernest Lawrence, Arthur Compton, each contributed in design, experimental physics, cyclotron/enrichment approaches, and administrative/scientific leadership. Science advanced by experiment, often surprising and sometimes tragic. Chicago Pile 1, December 2, 1942. The first controlled chain reaction proved the possibility of producing plutonium in reactors and demonstrated control via cadmium control rods. This was a pivotal practical moment. Metallurgical problems. Plutonium's metallurgy surprised engineers. It has multiple allotropes and is chemically reactive. Machining it safely and reliably to form a pit needed new techniques. Pre-initiation and pre-detonation worries. Discovery of P-240's spontaneous fission forced the shift to implosion designs, a major change in project direction and complexity. Trial and error on explosive lenses. Early implosion tests showed asymmetries and poor compression. A long sequence of smaller-scale tests, known as pumpkin tests and others, and electrical firing trials were needed to reach the precision required. Safety incidents, radiation exposure, and criticality accidents occurred. Safety protocols were developed and improved. Notable are later accidents, post-war, but the always present risk of criticality influenced operational procedures. By mid-1944 to early 1945, parallel tracks began to converge. Enough plutonium was coming from Hanford reactors for a weapon design to be fabricated and tested. Oak Ridge's enrichment processes gradually produced fissile uranium for the gun-type weapon. Los Alamos, under Oppenheimer, was refining implosion designs, machining pits, building explosive lenses, and developing initiators. Physicists and engineers had to optimize not just a single variable, but an entire interacting system: nuclear physics, high explosives, metallurgy, electronics, and chemistry. Each successful test result instrumented subcritical shots, detonator synchronization tests, radiochemical assays, increased confidence that a full-scale detonation would work. But the risk and unknowns were still substantial. While the chapter focuses on the technical, the scientific community was not blind to the moral gravity of their work. Many scientists, Oppenheimer, Bath, Szilard, and others, discussed the implications of weaponizing nuclear fission. Some argued that demonstrating the weapon's power might end the war quickly. Others feared civilian casualties and the arms race that would follow. These ethical debates quietly influenced post-war policy discussions and the later activism of some Manhattan Project scientists. Los Alamos was chosen for a mix of reasons: remoteness, existing infrastructure, good access by rail and road, and a setting that could be secured and kept secret. The site, on a mesa in northern New Mexico, provided natural concealment and controlled access. Once chosen, it transformed rapidly from a quiet ranching area into a small, intensely focused town, a secret city dedicated entirely to developing the bomb. The government moved quickly. Land was acquired, roads improved, water systems installed, laboratories erected, and housing constructed for scientists, technicians, and support staff. Within months, the mesas and canyons that had been sparsely populated were ringed with laboratories, barracks, workshops, and administrative buildings. J. Robert Oppenheimer was a complex leader, brilliant, intellectually magnetic, socially ambiguous, and personally intense. As scientific director, he set the tone for Los Alamos. He preferred a compact, collaborative center where theorists and experimentalists could meet informally and argue ideas at short notice. He recruited widely: top-tier theorists, practical experimentalists, chemists, metallurgists, explosive engineers, and talented junior physicists. He encouraged interdisciplinary work. The bomb problem could not be solved within a single specialty. Oppenheimer's leadership style combined intellectual ferocity with an ability to create an atmosphere of loyalty and urgency. He chaired meetings, posed deep conceptual questions, kept morale with wry humor, and managed conflicting egos, not always gracefully but effectively. Los Alamos was organized into divisions that mirrored the multifaceted problem. Theoretical division, led by Hans Bethe, this group calculated critical masses, neutron transport, hydrodynamics for implosion, and yield estimates. They produced the mathematical backbone for weapon design. Experimental ordnance divisions focused on building test assemblies, detonators, initiators, and diagnostics. George Kistiapowski's explosive lens work fit here. Metallurgical and chemistry divisions solved plutonium metallurgy, casting pits, chemical separation processes, and corrosion handling issues. Engineering and fabrication shops turned designs into physical parts, machining plutonium pits, shaping high explosives, building firing circuits. Diagnostic and instrumentation developed radiochemical assays, neutron detectors, and high-speed cameras to measure tests. Administration and security managed housing, supplies, mail, and the ever-present secrecy.